Welcome in, fans, to the Utah Lacrosse Report podcast. I'm your host, Tim Haslam. My guest today is Chandler Wescott, who is the founder of Sidewall. Wescott and his dad, Marty, and brother started the brand to redefine lacrosse culture through elevated apparel. Sidewall seeks to bridge the gap between the sports tradition and the modern, high-end aesthetics of streetwear, creating a fresh perspective for players and fans alike. Wescott was a two-time All-American at Bountiful before playing at BYU in Southern Virginia. In this episode, we talk about his playing career and starting a lacrosse apparel brand. Hope you enjoy the show. This episode is brought to you by Vessel Kitchen. From practice to game day, fuel matters. At Vessel Kitchen, everything's made from scratch with clean, high-quality ingredients so you can recover faster and play harder. Eat well, do well. Welcome to the show, Chandler. How are you?
I'm doing great. Tim, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining me today. Super excited to talk to you. You got a lot of interesting tidbits about your lacrosse life and excited to talk about that. But before we dive into that, when did you start playing lacrosse?
Honestly, I've kind of been playing lacrosse forever. I think I'm a unique one growing up in Utah where my dad actually played lacrosse his whole life. My dad's from Aurora, Colorado. And the time he was growing up and in high school, there was like all these East Coast dudes that moved to Denver. And so lacrosse exploded there growing up for him. And so he grew up playing in high school. He played at BYU. So I kind of always had a stick in my hand. I think I went to my first like BYU camp when I was 6. So I was, just kind of always played.
And you're right. You probably were one of the few, especially your age, where you had a dad that was playing lacrosse. So definitely lucky. Obviously, your dad, Marty Wescott, longtime coach, at Bountiful, helped start the program there. And then, kind of had stints in a couple different other spots. We actually interviewed Marty a few years ago, so you can go back and look at that if you want. It's a great episode for sure. At that time, you grow up, you're playing lacrosse. You actually go to Layton High School, but then play for Bountiful because for two reasons. One, Layton didn't have a team, right? And then second, your dad was coaching at Bountiful. Talk about that. Was that weird? Was it normal? Was it fine? How did that all shake out?
Kind of all the above. It definitely was weird. Like when I look back at it, it feels pretty weird, but at the time it was pretty normal. So yeah, I grew up in Layton my whole life. But like you mentioned, my dad had kind of started the program at Bountiful and they'd seen a ton of success. They had a ton of really, really great players come through that program. A lot of guys went on to play in college. And so those were like the guys that I watched growing up, the Mike Fabrizio and crew. And those were the guys that I aspired to be like. And so I kind of just grew up around the Bountiful program and he'd coached a long time at Bountiful before I was even kind of coming up into the high school landscape. So then by the time I got to high school, lacrosse was still a club. So not every school had a team. And we were still in Layton. And so I was going to Layton High. All of my kind of best friends that I grew up playing with, or like playing soccer with, were all Layton guys. And so didn't make sense for me to go to a different school. That's where I wanted to go. So went to Layton and, I got permission to go play for Bountiful. One, to play for my dad. And then two, just that's kind of the program I grew up around. Those were the guys that I knew, played with forever. So, but yeah, it was certainly weird. Like I remember went to a football game in the fall where it was Layton versus Bountiful. And I was like, oh man, I got friends on both sides. So I kind of like swapped back and forth between the crowds. And but yeah, it was a good time. But yeah, certainly when I go back and tell people that story, they're always a little confused.
And like I told you before, I actually didn't know you played or went to Layton until someone reached out from Layton High School because they were getting an article about you. And I was really confused. But then your dad was like, no, he actually goes to Layton and plays for Bountiful. I guess that was naive of me to just assume that, the kids played where they went, but not the case, especially in the club days.
Well, and it was funny too, because the only reason that kind of came about is because some of my friends were like telling people, hey, you got to like pay attention to this guy. And it was funny because like all these other people, just a lot of my friends were like, wait, this guy plays lacrosse. Like they a lot of my kind of peers that I grew up around had no idea. So
absolutely. Fun. Do you see yourself coaching at Layton in the future?
Oh, that would be fun. I live in Saratoga Springs now, so I don't make it that way too much. But I think that would be really cool. It's fun to see that they have a team and they're playing there, and it's super exciting. I haven't been to any games or like seen anything, Yeah, but I'd love to get out there. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, and in fact, Layton hosted the championships. I want to say 2021. So great venue. It was a great little spot there for the championships. So maybe down the road, you and your dad could go coach at Layton. Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, definitely. That'd be awesome.
You play at Bountiful. You're an All-American 2 years in 2013, 2014. I'm sure at some point along those in those days, you're sitting there going, "Hey, I want to play at the next level." You mentioned your dad played at BYU. What though was sort of your path to getting to BYU, and did you look at any other schools?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I feel like it was around kind of my freshman year. I felt like I made a pretty big jump in my skill set and abilities, and things started to click a little more. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I think I can see myself being pretty successful. And then, yeah, like I said, that sophomore year, I had a really good year and kind of started getting noticed a little bit more. Started playing on some more travel teams and going to different tournaments and things like that, and had success obviously here in the Utah area. And yeah, I started to be like, okay, let's do this. I want to go. I want to go play. Obviously BYU was kind of always in my ear because my dad played there. We grew up going to those games, watching Elliot Grow and Ted Farron and all those guys growing up. That was the big, lacrosse scene, for me growing up, and I just loved the program and wanted to be a part of that. But after, playing on some of these other teams and getting a better idea of the lacrosse landscape as a whole in other colleges, I definitely wanted to explore other options. And so, yeah, played on some more club teams, played on West Coast, got invited to the DU camps, got invited to the blue chip, the Nike blue chip camp, and just wanted to see what else was out there. And I felt like I did well at those things and had a really good time, but honestly, I kind of just wanted to stay here. I knew I had other aspirations and things that I wanted to do in my life, and that I felt like BYU kind of fit that mold really well, where it was a good combo of high level lacrosse, but also allowed me to do some other things, to focus on school, allowed me to go on a church mission, things like that. That maybe some other areas wasn't as exciting for me. So yeah, those next couple of years, I certainly traveled and went to different tournaments and camps and things, but ultimately it was kind of just BYU was the place I wanted to go.
Sure. And you mentioned those Ted Farron and Elliot Grow teams. I ran into Elliot a month ago at In-N-Out in Orem.
Nice.
And it was ironic because there were a bunch of BYU players sitting around him and they had no idea who he was. And so,
which is crazy to me. That's crazy.
It's crazy for sure. And then, you see Ted Farron on the street and you think he's just a normal guy, but both definite excellent players in their own right at BYU. Great role models too. You go on a mission, you come back, you play in 2018 at BYU. Then you make the decision to go to SVU, Southern Virginia. What led to that?
Yeah, it was kind of a bunch of things. I actually graduated high school early and played at BYU. So I basically skipped my senior year of high school to go play at BYU, just because I wanted to kind of get ahead. I wanted some kind of college life experience before going on my mission. And I had done a bunch of extra classes so that I was able to graduate. And so I was like, why not just go early? So that's what I did. So I actually got, the crazy part of that is I mentioned those Bountiful guys that I watched growing up, like Mike. They were all still seniors at BYU. And so it was crazy just because of the timing and missions and things that I got to play with them. So that starting attack line my freshman year at BYU was me and then Mike Fabrizio and Jack Fabrizio, which was the coolest thing. Those guys were my heroes growing up. So that was wild for me. But my freshman year was awesome, was just the best thing ever. Lacrosse was so fun. We did really, really well. You talk about mentors and heroes. There was a ton of guys on that team who, were mentors to me. And then that freshman class, we were all super tight, really good friends, had a great time, and then go on my mission, stay in touch with everybody, and then come home. And then so then I played, that 2018 year. And my dad had been coaching at BYU kind of my freshman year and while I was going on my mission, and then wasn't coaching anymore that last year that I played at BYU. And same thing, we had a really great team. We had a great run. We beat Utah that last year, and that was a really fulfilling thing for us as a program before the U went to the D1 level. And so we had a ton of fun and a lot of really good things. But basically after that season, I was kind of at a point in my life where I needed to evaluate what I wanted to do, thinking about school. I was engaged and was getting married that summer. And so thinking about now, not just myself. And so it basically came down to, I just needed a change. I just needed to get out of Utah a little bit. There were, growing up in the lacrosse scene and my dad, there was just a lot of just things happened that I felt like I kind of got put in the middle of, and I just needed to get out and kind of get a change of scenery. And then what led me to, and kind of went through that same process where I started exploring all options again. I was like, do I play? Do I not play? Do I stay and not play? Do I just stay and play? Do I go somewhere else and play? I kind of went through all of that. How I ended up at SVU was Coach Lamb. So Jason Lamb, longtime BYU guy. Again, he was the coach at BYU all growing up for me that I watched, and he and my dad were really good buddies. And so I knew the Lambs really well and had kind of followed him as he had bounced around between, Adams State, the pros, Notre Dame, and then kind of at SVU. And we had always kind of talked, but I was like, nah, like BYU is where I want to go. And so then once I kind of expressed interest in exploring other options, he and Scotty Winterton called me and was like, hey, let's talk, and took a trip out there. And it just was like exactly what I needed at that time in my life. And both me and my wife, she's from Florida. She's an East Coast gal. She her parents are BYU diehards. And so that's kind of why she came out, but she wants to be on the East Coast. And so when we went there, we took a trip out to Virginia. It was just like, oh, this is like just such a cool place. It's kind of this like tiny little pocket in the middle of nowhere, beautiful part of the country. And then I just got to be a place where I didn't know anybody, nobody knew me, and I just loved that. That's kind of what I wanted to do and be a part of, and just, yeah. And then for like my schooling as well, I was still trying to figure out exactly what I wanted to do in school, and felt like some of the programs at BYU wasn't exactly what I wanted, and some of the offerings at SVU felt a little more applicable to me. So
yeah, and as I look down that list of that first that 2019 SVU team, bunch of familiar names for Utah people. Just a good mix, and that's something that Southern Virginia has done really well, is continued to bring in great talent from Utah. By the time this episode airs, they will have just played Westminster last night because they're in town for their spring break. So definitely a cool program. What were some of your best memories from your time at SVU?
Well, one of my first memories that I think of is actually my visit that I took. So like I said, we went out there, we went on a visit, and the thing that I remembered most from that visit about the team is just how freaking hard that team worked, right? Coach Lamb pushed them crazy hard in practice, but also like the workouts that we would do, the strength and conditioning coach was super intense. And so I jumped in on one of the team workouts, and basically what this workout was is we had like a 45-pound plate that we had to carry and kind of hold on our back. And we literally ran like 2 miles in the woods, like literally just in the woods, in the forest. Like people were tripping over like logs. It wasn't like a path. We were just in the woods running around like crazy. We ended up to this field where we did like a big circuit workout. And then we ran 2 miles back carrying that plate. And it was just like this crazy workout. And everybody was like, who was there was laughing. They're like, dude, this guy's never going to come here now. Like we just scared him off. But honestly, that was actually the thing that like drew me there, was that level of like intensity, care about lacrosse. And then also at the time, SVU was in the conference as a lot of the top dogs in D3. So you have like Salisbury, Christopher Newport, Washington and Lee, York, like all these like really, really big powerhouse programs out there. And that's what I wanted to experience as well. A bunch of these like D3 dudes who, were, D1 level guys and kind of just ended up in those areas and played really, really high level lacrosse. And so that I think was one of my favorite things, was just to get to experience like a true East Coast game as a guy who grew up in Utah, grew up around, kind of that West Coast style. It was fun to see how the pace changes and the style of play changes. And then, just the team and the friendships that I built there. There's a ton of guys there that I'm still really, really close with today. And we had a ton of success. We we had like the highest scoring offense in the country. We would average, I think, like 18 or 19 goals a game. So it was really fun for me, who was playing offense with some of these guys. We were just slinging it like crazy. It was awesome.
Were you on the team when their bus burned?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. How could I forget that? So yeah, we literally, so I think we were driving to play Stockton in Pennsylvania, and it's, maybe 8 p.m. at night. This is, day before the game. So we're just driving to our hotel, and we're just in a big team bus, and, just normal trip. It was kind of like getting quiet, just as, we had been traveling for a while, and we're actually watching Lord of the Rings, like on the TV screens in the bus. And out of nowhere, our bus driver just slams on the brake and like pulls over, and we all just kind of like jolt up, and he stands up and like yells, "There's a fire," and like yells for everybody to get out. And we're all like, some guys were asleep. We're all confused. We're like, "Don't grab anything. Just get out of here." So we all just take off, and like everybody just sprints off the bus, and we all turn around. And sure enough, in the back corner, like the back tire area, kind of where the engine was, had caught on fire. And so it was like slowly starting to build. And another joke we always talk about is Coach Lamb is like, get the gear. So a couple guys then like turned around and ran back on the bus to like start shoveling gear off. And people had backpacks with their laptops and school things in there. So we like tried to salvage as much stuff as we could. But seriously, in minutes, we like stepped back, and the entire bus was like engulfed in flames. It was like the craziest thing I'd ever seen. And I think my phone had died, I think. So guys are like, on their phone, taking videos, posting on social media. So, like that this is going on, and somebody like contacts my dad and says like, "Hey, the SVU bus just caught on fire." And he's like trying to call me, but my phone was dead. So he called one of my other buddies, and he's like, "Dude, are you okay?" Like, so it was crazy. So then like after the bus caught on fire, we had to get these like, Sprinter vans and shuffle us all to the hotel. And then we had to like, since we were in Pennsylvania, we didn't have half of our stuff, like half of the sticks had gone. And so we like went to Dick's Sporting Goods and bought a bunch of sticks, and guys were stringing them. And we played that next day. So
that's wild. Glad everyone's okay.
Yeah, everybody's okay.
You can laugh about it now, but probably a little scary in the moment. I think I saw it from Dean Anderson. I think he was the one that alerted me to it when it happened. Yeah. But yeah, just a crazy experience. You graduate from SVU. What career path did you end up picking? Maybe you're still looking. I don't know. But how did you? Where did you end up there? And then how did you get back to Utah?
Yeah. So what I found at SVU for my career was I really found a love for design. So I went into more like the graphic design, and my first job right out of college was I worked at this design agency, and we did everything from like branding, logos, packaging, and websites, like kind of just everything under the sun is what our agency would do. And that was awesome. So I learned a ton from that experience. And my goal with working at that type of agency was really to figure out what type of design I wanted to specialize in. And then kind of towards the end there, we got into more like product UX UI design. So when I did a couple of those projects, that's what I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. I want to focus on the product side, get more into the tech space. And so now I work at a company called Redo. That's a tech company startup here in Utah, and I work as a UX designer. And yeah, I love it. It's awesome.
Very cool. And then somewhere along that path, last year you decide, hey, I want to get into lacrosse apparel.
Yeah.
It's a busy space already. What kind of led you to that thought?
Yeah. So my dad's been a coach forever. He's coached, a bunch of high schools, BYU, UVU, and kind of towards the tail end of coaching, he was just ready to be done, move on, go to his next chapter. There was a business that he had worked on, with a lot of his like coaching experiences to print shirts, jerseys, things like that. And he had built up a relationship with this guy over the last, few years. And this guy, they were talking one day, and he's like, yeah, I think I'm going to sell the business. And my dad was like, well, hey, I'm kind of looking to get into something. And so they talked, ultimately worked out a deal where my dad bought his business, which is like a printing business. So screen printing, embroidery, vinyl, that type of thing. And he basically just took that business over from him. and started doing these things. And the business is more promotional items. So yeah, they'll do these big bulk orders for schools, teams, companies, organizations. It's not necessarily like a brand that they're making. But then he had been doing this now for a couple years, and I was out in South Carolina at the time. My wife and I were living out there for a couple years, and he came and visited one day, and I was just asking him about the business, and I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool if we like created a brand? Like, of course, as a designer, every designer wants to create their own like apparel brand, but there's so many barriers to entry with doing something like that. You got to figure out your niche, your market. You got to figure out how to sell to them. You got to create a brand. You got to figure out, the unit economics with like, apparel and merchandise and e-commerce. Like that stuff's not super easy. And generally your margins are crazy thin. And so there's just a ton of like logistical challenges to creating a brand like this. But we were talking and we were like, if we kind of did something together, if we were able to figure out the marketing piece and the branding piece to create a brand that people really loved, the unit economics kind of work out actually because we own the production side of things, where that's very unique. Like most people who start brands don't do that. They have to outsource, pay people to do that. So that during that conversation is where we were like, wait, this could actually make sense. So between me and my dad and my little brother, who my little brother is like a video guy, he's a marketing guy. He's got a ton of experience in that world. The three of us kind of put our heads together and was like, hey, let's just try this. Let's give it a shot. If it doesn't work, oh, well, we don't have to put up a ton of capital to get this thing going. So it felt like a really natural thing to just try. All of us are very entrepreneurial minded. My dad's, done every job under the sun, always taught and instilled in us to be entrepreneurial minded with our jobs. So we just wanted to try it. So we kicked around, I'd say for about like 8 or 9 months, trying to figure out what exactly this brand could be. And I naturally wanted to go aesthetically into the more streetwear, type brand and style that's like really popular right now, and tried to figure out exactly what we were going to sell, what, was the vibe of the brand, and kind of went this one direction and like didn't get any traction. Like we didn't get any, any purchases, and, we just didn't feel like we had an identity. And at the time during that time, I moved back to Utah. So I moved back to Utah about 1.5 years ago. And my dad was helping me build a deck in our backyard. And we would just talk about ideas and talk about things. And I remember this one conversation where I was like, what if we do lacrosse? Like, hear me out. Like, what if we do lacrosse? Lacrosse felt like a world that we all knew. It felt like something that was, a common passion between all of us, which I think is really important in starting a brand like this. It has to be something that you love or passionate about, excited about anyway. And I just felt like there was this lack of like cool lacrosse streetwear culture things. I remember like in middle school, right? I was a big lax rat. Like I was the lacrosse guy, and I wore this shirt. It was like a neon, like green shirt. And on the front, it said like 90% lax. And then on the back, it said 90% flow. And it was like hair coming out of a helmet. This shirt I thought was so cool. And all of my friends made so much fun of me for wearing that shirt. Just like, this is the dumbest shirt. And it like, they just like didn't get it, thought it was the stupidest thing. And I was like, okay, man, I'm never wearing a lacrosse shirt ever again in my life. Like that was kind of the vibe of lacrosse apparel. I feel like in my growing up was the big, loud, neon, ugly, really stupid, cheesy lacrosse phrases. And kind of as a result, I feel like culturally lacrosse wasn't cool. People who didn't play lacrosse, like kind of looked down on it that way. And so I was like, big picture, it's like, I'd love to fix and solve that problem. So the idea was to create a brand, it's lacrosse focused, lacrosse inspired, but aesthetically it's really cool. It's really cultural. It's really like streetwear vibes. That was kind of the idea, is to bring lacrosse into this new sphere, to kind of make it something that like, hey, these lacrosse people who are really proud, love lacrosse, love to play lacrosse, they want to rep it, but they also, want to look cool and look good and kind of fit with the trends of fashion. Wanted to kind of mix and blend those worlds together. So that's kind of the genesis of the idea.
Yeah. And you come up with the name Sidewall, obviously, part of the stick, great name, by the way. I love it. And
I have to give my little brother came up with that name, and he's real proud. It's so I got to give him the plug there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like you said, just make shirts, hoodies, hats, all the different things that, you need to make lacrosse street apparel cool.
Yep.
And I think you've done that. I first learned about the brand at Ski Town last year. When I ran into your dad, he was setting up the booth. And I was like, Marty, what is this? And he's like, oh, this is, Chandler's brand that I'm working on with him and my other son. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. You had some Ski Town apparel. That was really awesome. And it was fun. Talk about, you've got a couple, I'm looking at the side now. You've got the Jim Brown shirt, which is a classic. Then you've got a Pat Spencer shirts. What goes into making a shirt for, I know you've had like a Brendan O'Neill shirt as well. What goes into making shirts for those guys?
Yeah, totally. So, that's kind of the main vibe that we're doing is these like player streetwear kind of oversized graphic tees. Those are really popular right now. I bought one of like Cristiano Ronaldo for myself and was like, oh, this one's sick. But I was like, man, I'd love to like, have like a lacrosse player of this style and like couldn't find anything. So that was kind of our first go is like, let's take these cool lacrosse players people look up to, and let's like make this kind of streetwear graphic of them. And so we kind of just went for it, and hit the ground running, and we just needed to test the waters and see what we did. And, started with like a Mikey Powell shirt, and that one like crushed it, did super well. They kind of came to us and said, hey, you're using stuff you're not allowed to use, like you need to stop. And so we had to pull that one off, and we've kind of been working with them ever since. And then, kind of went with some of the PLL players like Brendan O'Neill. We did one with Cross Ferrara, Eric Law, Dylan Malloy. And that one we worked directly with them. So we said, hey, we're going to use like photos that you guys have, and work with you and split like a licensing royalty agreement. That way we weren't like, screwing anybody over and trying to like, we want to promote these shirts, promote the game, but also like, hey, give the players, their piece as well. And so that was kind of the direction that we went. And then ended up getting in touch with the PLL, and we're trying to work on, this is kind of in the works right now, but still trying to work on a licensing agreement with them so that we can move forward with those types of things without, breaking any laws and anything like that. So we kind of just like sent it to start, learned a lot along the way, and are now doing things through the proper channels. And I think we'll have some pretty exciting things coming out this summer. So
awesome. Yeah, and the website's sidewall.shop. You can get on there and go find some nice t-shirts, hoodies, hats, all that kind of stuff. What does the future of Sidewall look like?
Yeah. So I think there's kind of two things that we're thinking of right now. It's like Sidewall as it is today. It's the streetwear brand, like kind of Sidewall, the brand. I think that, will kind of continue and move forward and develop. We want to do more of these like player tees. Those are the ones that like people love the most, kind of by far. I think as we grow and our name gets, more notoriety, I think people will, kind of latch on to the Sidewall. Like I want this to be a brand name that people, wear, and it's cool just to wear the name. I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think we're like well known enough yet, but it's, like some of these big time streetwear brands like Kith or Essentials, like these brands are cool just because the name. And that's where I want Sidewall to get to eventually. Now that's going to take a ton of work. We're not there yet. But I see that as kind of being the future. We obviously want to still exist in the lacrosse space. Like I said, working with a couple of organizations right now, trying to structure some licensing deals so that we can do more of these player graphics and like really celebrate the game, keep that kind of home centered on the game. But I think also ultimately we'd love to expand into other sports. I think there's like a natural expansion into hockey. Specifically with the state of Utah, there's a ton of excitement with hockey right now. I'd love to get into basketball, like some more of these like culture, like more mainstream pop culture sports would love to get into. And that's kind of why, you mentioned the name, we landed on Sidewalls because it is lacrosse specific. For those who know what lacrosse is, they'll like recognize that immediately. But for those who don't know lacrosse, it's kind of just a cool general term that you don't have to know that it's lacrosse. And so we started with that vision in mind that this would eventually expand a little outside of lacrosse to be that name brand, expand into other sports. And we wouldn't have to change the name because the name, yes, it's specific to lacrosse, but it could be generally applicable. So that's like one side is like expanding the brand a little bit more to more the name brand and more sports. And then the other side of things is we're starting to explore like team gear deals where we have a unique ability while owning the production and owning the design. We can create some really cool, unique pieces for these teams. That's not just like, hey, slap a logo on your cheap shirt and like call it a day. It's like we can actually take time with these teams, club teams, high school teams across the country and say, hey, we have this like really cool, meticulous design process that we can work with you and to create something that's actually like lasting and memorable. So these high school kids like either want to wear it to school or, they'll keep these shirts and wear them forever because they're cool. It's not just like, some kind of bad looking logo slapped on a shirt. So those are kind of the two branches of Sidewall that we see right now expanding into the future.
Awesome. And again, that's sidewall.shop. Chandler, I want to thank you for coming on the podcast today. We really appreciate it. We love to tell stories about UConn's making cool stuff, especially if it's lacrosse related. So thanks again. We appreciate it and best of luck.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.